this is Beth Mackinney for FacePaintcom, and today we're going to talk about how to set up for an event. So one piece of equipment that of course is very important is your chair. I use a tall director's chair and I really like it. It's been a great piece of equipment. This is not my first director's chair. The first one really was only good to about 225 to 250 pounds, and it made me a little edgy when adults were sitting in it. So what I ended up doing was getting a chair that was a little more heavy duty so I didn't have to be concerned about that. And it's very transportable, it folds up, and I made a cover for it so that I would be able to make sure kids didn't fall through. This one doesn't have as much of an opening in the back as my original chair did, but I like to make sure that nobody can slip through accidentally when the kids are really little. And of course, another piece of equipment you're going to need is a work surface. So I have a Craft and Go right here. I used to have a table that I would use, and I would bring it with me. And the advantage for having a table that you bring with you is that you don't have to rely on a hostess to provide one, and you know the work surface is going to be large enough. I try to make sure that I always bring my own equipment with, everything that I will possibly need, because I don't like to get in a situation where I don't have what I need or where I'm hoping someone else will have something that is sufficient. So in this case, Craft and Go is great. The legs fold up, makes it really easy to carry with, and I highly suggest it, but a table works great too, and I did use a small light camping table. It just took me a couple more minutes to set it up. Now when I'm setting up for an event, I have my Craft and Go, which I open up. Pretty much everything is in place in here. I have a foam piece which I put over my paints, and I have some sponges which keep my brush holder in place. It's also magnetic, so it holds onto the back. My paints are all magnetic, so they hold onto these metal plates, and they stay in place pretty well. And I have my glitters and my stencils up here that I might need, and my water bottle. Put magnets on the side of that, so it's also magnetic. I have business cards, hand sanitizer, and I've put magnets on virtually everything that's in here so that it stays where I want it to stay and it's ready for use. But when I'm setting up, I open up my Craft and Go, or if you were to put things out on your table, you're going to need a bag of some kind to hold your dirty sponges. And in my backpack, I also have a bag with clean sponges. So the bag with clean sponges is actually a laundry bag, and I use it because it's mesh, and so it breathes. I always make sure my sponges are really dry, but just in case, this way I know that it can breathe and they're not likely to mildew or get icky, just in case one of them might have been slightly damp when I put it in here. So I take these and I open them up and I clip them on the front of my kit. So they're hanging right in front. See if I can move this so you can see. And I clip these bags right in front when I'm setting up. Only takes a second. And then I have a place for my clean sponges, which I can reach very easily, and also for the dirty sponges. Makes it quick and easy. Okay, you can see a few more things here that I use during my setup for events. I always bring wet wipes with me, and I make sure that they are unscented. I usually put them in the side pocket of my chair so they're easily accessible and they're not in the way on my work area. I also bring lights because I've found, especially in restaurants, any place that's kind of dim and has a nice atmosphere like that, sometimes there's just not enough light. And while I often remind hostesses that I do need adequate lighting, sometimes they put me in a corner where the lighting isn't great for face painting. So if I do run into that, I have lights that I can clip on the back and I can light them up so I can see, and if I need to, I can even turn them towards the person that I'm working on. So I have two of them and they're both rechargeable, so I highly recommend them, or any kind of light that you just carry some with, because you never know when you're going to be in a situation where you might need that. If it's a bright day or if it's a brightly lit area, I don't even put them on. The other thing I have when I'm setting up is water. You have to have water for face paint. So I have water wells that compress and are short, and I clean them out after my events so I know they're nice and clean for the next person. I use two of these, and usually I have a small plastic cup that I keep under here for just clean water, and I put water in them during my setup. I don't use a lot of water, and I also have a container in my backpack which I can empty dirty water into if I think it's getting a little murky and I want to make sure it's clean. And I also use brush bath during my setup because I've found that by putting this in my first well, I get a lot more paint off my brushes. And then when I rinse here, I have a rinse water and a clean water, and it just means I'm working with a nice clean brush for each child. There are a few other pieces of equipment that you are going to want in your kit, and one of those is the all-important mirror, because after you face paint a child, you want to hold this up so kids can see what they look like. So I have two unbreakable mirrors that I have with me. They're like camping mirrors, and they're made of acrylic. If I drop them, they won't break. I did drop one once and it chipped a little on the edge, so I just replaced that with a new one. But for the most part, they won't break like glass will break, where it just shatter in pieces. So that's why I use these, because they're very safe. If a child happens to grab one and walk off with it and I just miss it, I don't feel concerned for their safety. For some events, I also have a really large mirror, and I put this on the back of my chair with clips. And the reason I do that is so that when I'm face painting, sometimes children will come up to me and say, "Hey, can I see my face again?" And I have to stop and show them the mirror and let them look again. And they just want to make sure their design still looks good, or they just want to see it again. And so if I hang this on the back of a chair, it's an extra. It takes a little bit of extra time to set up. It's not necessary. But I've found that children really like it, especially young kids. They like to come back and look in the mirror and see what they look like later, because part of the fun is that they know what they look like. So that's a really nice piece of equipment you can add to your kit. If I'm in a really big hurry for an event, then I won't hang it up. If I know I've got to get in and out fast, I will just leave it down and just use the hand mirror. But if it's a really large event where there are a lot of children and they may not have access to another mirror, I'll go ahead and put it up. Okay, and one last part of your setup is an easel or a display of some kind, if you would like, so that you can let kids know what designs are options. I have several different versions of mine. This one has a well child policy. It tells what time face painting ends, and it also has some general options that I can create designs from, suggestions, in case they like any of these. I use this one more for bigger events, and I like just using, it's really a word board, and I like using a word board because that way I can make changes based on what the child wants without being limited to one visual. But I also have an idea book that I use sometimes for smaller parties, and I have a board that also has images I can change out. So if they have a specific theme and they want specific designs, I can do that as well. So something to keep in mind as you're setting up your kit, one more thing, whether you're using a table or craft and go, but make sure that you're setting it up. If you're right-handed, it should be on your right. If you're left-handed, it's going to be on your left. Think about table height. If you're a person that comes into an event and someone else is supplying a table for you, are you a person that sits down where you need 2 chairs? Are you a person that brings your director's chair so you don't need that? Those are all things to think about so you're not bending over all day and uncomfortable by the end of the day. If you bring your own kit and your own work surface and your own, not just your kit, but if you bring your own work surface and your own chair, you can control those things a little bit more easily. Also think about where you're setting up for an event. I like to be backed up to a wall. And the reason for that is I can keep a little better eye on where children are and where they're going and whether they're going to get into something accidentally. I did have an issue once where a child reached out over my table, pulled his arm back, and caught my water well on him, and he dumped it all over on himself. And he was just playing. He wasn't really trying to get into my paints. He was just shooting his arms out there. But the problem is it did catch that. And fortunately we're outside, so it didn't make a mess in a house. But after that I became much more careful about making sure that I knew where kids were and to try to block their access to my equipment, to keep them from having accidents and to make, not make messes in a hostess's house. Thanks for joining me today. I hope this was helpful as you are setting up for events, especially if you're a new face painter. And check out our other videos on FacePaintcom, and don't forget to leave a comment if there's something that you would like to hear about specifically. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.